Okay, there you go. See right there. This is so the mute is for them to hear you.
I have a question. Can you hear me? Dr. Rosita, can you hear me?
Dr. Rasita, there's a question from Dr. Anderson.
Right.
Yes.
Can people watch this? Let's say someone can't be available now, but let's say tomorrow or the next day. Is there a way that they can, watch this program that we're doing now?
Yes, we are live on YouTube as we speak, Mr. Anderson.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Shekharji has not joined us yet, but we will start the program.
Please. Yeah, Dr. Anderson, would you like to go first?
Right. Shall we start now?
Yes, please.
Oh, good.
Okay,
Right.
I will start, Shekharji. 1 second. I request everybody else to please mute your mics so that we have a clear audio. Namaste and a very good morning to all of you. We are gathered here today to celebrate the life and honor the memory of Professor Dr. Ved Prakash Nanda Ji, who has transitioned from this mortal existence to the eternal realm. In our Hindu tradition, death is not merely an end, but a transcendence, a profound transformation from one state of being to another. Professor Ved Prakash Nanda, a luminary in the Indian diaspora, recently passed away, leaving behind a legacy of profound contributions to literature, education, and international law. Born in 1934 in Gujranwala, British India, his journey transcended borders as his family migrated to India after the partition in 1947. He was a professor of international law at the prestigious University of Denver, Colorado. Professor Nanda's remarkable career reflects his dedication to academia, international law, and fostering global understanding. Professor Nanda was awarded the prestigious Padma Bhushan in 2018 for his contributions to literature and education by the Indian government. Prime Minister Narendra Modi offered his condolences to the family members of Nanda Ji, saying he was prominent and a distinguished member of the Indian diaspora and very passionate about strong India-US relations. Joining us today in this Shraddhanjali event are Nandaji's very close friends, colleagues, and compatriots whose lives have been enriched by his association. Let me now request Professor Walter Anderson to please share his memories and reminiscences about Professor Nanda. Professor Anderson is a very uh, close friend of Nandaji. He's also he's from the he heads the South Asia Research Department of State at the SAIS School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins University. Professor Walter Anderson.
Thank you very
Over to you.
much. And yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And I want to thank the organizers for organizing this memorial event for Professor Nanda. He was a close friend of mine, and I respected him greatly. And I got to know him first as a graduate student at the University of Chicago. My advisors, Lloyd and Suzanne Rudolph, who I'm sure most of you know about, recently deceased themselves, had said to me, you need a dissertation on a subject that has relevance, and nobody has really written about the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. Now, it's going to be a difficult subject to write on because at that time, when I was a relatively young graduate student, there was a lot of negative feeling regarding the RSS. And they said, you will have to sort of handle this carefully. In fact, they had met Guru Gowalkar themselves. They were the first of the Western scholars to do so. And so they said, you should do a study of this. And so I did. But I had to go about doing some research on the background of the organization, which I knew very little about. There were just a few works on the subject. And most of the works that were done tended to be highly negative. So they said, call Professor Nanda. He not only knows, but he will help you and open up doors for you. And he did. And I contacted him, and I actually saw him. And then he revealed to me something I had not known, which I'm not sure how many people here know. He organized the first shaka of the HSS at the University of Chicago, where he had been as a research fellow for a period of time. And I didn't know that. I was, in fact, a little surprised by that because I didn't realize it had any presence at all at the University of Chicago. But he did. And he provided me with advice from that point on in my career. I was very saddened to hear of his death because I know he was looking forward to the consecration of the Ram Janmabhoomi at Ayodhya, which, as you all know, is only about a week from now. And I'm sure wherever he is, he's looking down at that event and with pride at what that event signifies for India. He was much more, though, than obviously a friend and advisor. He was, as Dr. Rosita had mentioned, he was a scholar of renown at the University of Denver, where one of his colleagues, as many of you may also know, was Madeleine Albright, who later became the Secretary of State, who also was involved in international law as well. And they were friends and colleagues and respected each other. I also knew, since I worked in the State Department for a period of time, for Madeleine Albright, as a matter of fact, we sometimes would comment on Professor Nanda. In fact, he was one of my openings to her in that she was a little surprised I knew him. And actually, I knew him relatively well, and I kept in contact with him. He was one of the first people here, again, as most of you may know on this panel, but people watching may not know. He was one of the first people in the U.S., because at the time he came, to give shape to the Hindu thought in Hinduism in the United States. And I mentioned already the forming of a shaka at the University of Chicago. But he did a lot of other things as well, including playing a prominent role in the formation of the Hindu University, which he was a trustee for many, many years, and continued in that role at the university. I will miss him. Everyone here obviously is going to miss him as well. And so, as I said, wherever he is now, I'm sure he's sort of looking down on this as well and wishing us all well, as we wish, whatever he, has been able to sort of organize and form in this country. He's done a magnificent job in giving shape to the influence of American Hinduism, as well as the relations between India and the U.S. So here again, something many of you here may not know, because I know from my time with the State Department, I and others would consult him, asking, him what he, as an expert, what he thought of how U.S. policies would affect India. And as an expert on international law and on India, and a person who was outspoken on both, he was a factor of significance on that. So thank you all for giving me an opportunity to giving my own expressions of goodwill to whatever he has done and in memory of what he has done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Anderson, for highlighting the contributions of Professor Nanda in strengthening the US-India relationship. It's such a wonderful remembrance from your side. Coming next, I would like to invite Narasimha Kopula ji to please share his remembrances of Professor Nanda.
Rasita ji, Dr. Agnihotri is online. Would you like to take him quickly?
Yes, Narasimha ji, we will take you after Professor Bhishma Agnihotri.
Sure.
Please be on stand.
Dr. Agnihotri, you can speak now.
Okay, I must say pranam to everybody, and it's a very sad situation because we have been together, Ved ji and me, for a long, long time. In fact, we have togetherness in all sense. We met in the Karikram when we were in India, and at that time we were together talking to various leaders of our prachar. So anyway, him and we were together on the same level. People, he was in Delhi at that time, and I was in Punjab, and I was a judge. He was a lawyer. So ultimately, he came to America, and he was sure of what he was going to do. And so ultimately, Amanya, other Adhikari had talked to me, I should also go to America. So I quit my job. I did not quit my job. I took leave of absence, and there he was, and we worked together, knowing together at that time. There was no shaka, by the way. That's a wrong. There was no shaka, but we ultimately started the whole process, and ultimately we shaka work was given to me as whatever it's called, and I'm forgetting various things. But anyway, Nanda Ji was always with us, and then Nanda Ji also. I know I had a very great role to play with this. With everybody agreeing that he's going to marry a non-Indian. So we were together, and I suggested to him That's okay. We will have one more swim Sivika to work with us. Don't worry about this. So he was a little bit concerned about that thing, that what people would think about it, that he was marrying an American person, but she was a wonderful lady. And unfortunately, she is no longer with us. By the way, I am of the same age as Naji has been, and many times people think that I'm gone. I'm not gone. I'm still here, but I think about everybody. Okay, that's what I would say that. And fortunately, because of these association with Nandaji and other people who were our co-workers, of course, I became, as you know, for India. So I just got off this whole thing, but we were always together, and we were of the same cycle, I would say that, in that year. And we talked a lot about it, everything. So he was not only, he was my friend, but we were colleagues. And I was his little bit local advisor in terms of what he will do regarding marriage and this and that and stuff. And he was always nice. And he had a lot of, as previous speaker talked about things. I agree with him, but he was a little bit off once, but everything is wonderful. Nandaji will always be with us. And unfortunately, I'm still here. My wife has been in trouble for a year, so therefore, sometime I got messed up here and there. For example, I was going to meet some program, but I couldn't do it because my wife, who's also a scholar and also she was part of the whole group, she liked Mrs. Nanda more than anybody else. And after Nandaji was always close to us all the way. So anyway, so I can keep on talking, but I know you have a limited time. And anything I can do at any time, I'm more than happy. And I remember when we met for the first time in New Delhi, we said at that time, this was a part of, there's no RSS movement at that time in that sense. So we said that we will work together, and we were asked by Sarasanga Chalak, if need be, go to the world phase. Okay, that's the way it was. And I'm happy to talk to you folks. And if I say something less, pardon me, okay? Okay?
नहीं, अग्निहोत्री जी बहुत बढ़िया, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, आपने इतना बात किया. We are very, very fortunate to have your words of eulogy for Nanda ji. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Bye.
It's such a pleasure to have Dr. Professor Bhishma Agnihotri join us. He's a former Dean of Law School at Louisiana, a very close friend, associate, and colleague of Professor Ved Nanda Ji. We are very happy that he could join us through the phone. Thank you once again, Bhishma Ji. We will now go to Narasimha Kopula Ji. Narasimha Ji is the Board of Trustees of the Hindu University of America. Please share your remembrances of Professor Nanda Ji.
Namaste, Rasida ji, and all the panelists, Devdi ji, Walter, Arpa ji, Adityan ji, and Thomas. So it's very to be part of here remembering Nanda ji. Even though I knew Nanda ji for the last 25, 30 years in as a Swayamsevak. Last 3 years, it has been very close coordination. Being part of Hindu University of America. So he was given responsibility a few years ago, and the way he turned it around with his leadership, with the board has always different views, how to take it, how to grow it, but his presence was always. Yesterday, Mananiya Dattaji put it. His presence and his humbleness is disarming. When you see him come up with Sadar Pranam And those are those things really disarm you or humble you, no matter who you are. So with last few years, his guidance, his calls, he used to call. I'm on multiple boards, but the chairman calling regularly, all the board members, prodding them to do some things is, at his age, it was really unbelievable. And I wish I had more longer association, like the way here, Bhishmaji. But last 2-3 years, what I had is I cherish for the rest of my life. And his leadership anywhere it was excellent. Number of organizations he led in policy matters, in Hindu, including like HSS. So anywhere you go, his loss is irreplaceable, and his guidance will be with us for long, long time. And all of us will miss him. And especially, I had a good talk with Catherine Ji as well in the last board of HUA meeting in Orlando. That was the first and last time I could see her. She's so charming lady. And at the memorial in Denver, at Catherine Ji's memorial a few months ago in Denver. And, at that time, Nandaji was kind of devastated, but he didn't show. He still showed the strength. He was still leading us. He was still, encouraging us to do things. And as long as just a few months ago in October, again, he's participated in Orlando in the board of meeting, traveling there, riding in the cars and all that. So at his age, he never said no. So it's positive. And so we will miss him. And we will take Parmatma to give his Atma Sadgati. And Namaste all. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much, Narasimhan, for remembering how detailed and process-oriented Professor Nanda Ji was, and how he would take care to look at every aspect in whatever boards and wherever he was involved. We will have next Dr. Adityan Ji, who is the president of board of sorry, he's a president and chairman of the board of directors of the International Commission for Human Rights and Religious Freedom, ICHRRF. He has known Nandaji for almost 2 decades in various Hindu activities, including HSS. Nandaji was also the chairman of the he was also the chairman of the board of advisory board of the ICHRRF. Over to Dr. Adityan Ji.
Thank you, Rasita Ji. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakah, nachainam kledayantyapo, nashoshayati maruta. My friends, the soul, the Atman, is immortal. The physical body of late Professor Ved P. Nanda might have left us, but he still lives with us. His work lives with us. His guidance is still with us. So, in a way, he will always be there for us. I have known Professor Nanda for more than 2 decades. What a towering personality he was. Giant of a man, intellectual in the truest possible sense, a quintessential gentleman who never wanted any special privileges. And I know that from personal experiences. I'd worked with him in various Hindu organizations as a Swayamsevak and Karyakarta. And over the period of time, I worked with him in various think tanks discussing policy issues. I have deep and immense respect for this man. He had a sense of wit and humor that was always infectious. He always made you laugh, he always made you smile, and he made you feel comfortable, whatever the situation may be. That was a unique ability of Professor Ved Nanda. I worked with him and Dr. Manohar Shinde on an initiative. Most of the people do not remember that, and that was Global Foundation for Civilizational Harmony. We worked on that particular think tank. It was started in Bharat, in India, as well as here. It took almost 5 years, that amount of work. We met various meetings in US as well as in Bharat. Ultimately, the idea was to remove the strife in the humankind and present, foster brotherhood and harmony at a global level. So that was an initiative that people don't remember at this point in time. Dr. Anderson talked about his relationship with Madeleine Albright. I'm very proud to say that there was another United States Secretary of State and former National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, who was Professor Nanda Ji's student. Professor Nanda Ji was very, very close to Democratic Party establishment. And there was an incident I do want to share with you. There was an anecdote he shared with me, and he was laughing and joking around. In 1992, when Bill Clinton became the president, the transition team called him from White House. They wanted him to come immediately because the president-elect wanted to speak to him. So he said, what for? I mean, he worked with the, all the luminaries and all, but he wanted to know what for. And he was told that he's being considered for a cabinet position. And Professor Nanda Ji laughingly said, but I cannot accept that. And people were aghast. Why, when the president-elect is calling you for a cabinet position, why you cannot accept a cabinet position? What he had not made known that he had not taken the citizenship. He was still a green card holder. And it may be interpreted negatively that after living in this country for 40 years or so, but it also shows his commitment to Mother India that he always cherished and just could not think of. So the president was very upset that, despite being in such a successful position, he never bothered to take the leadership. I'll also share another incident. In 2019, under the auspices of Council for Strategic Affairs, we did a symposium on Jammu and Kashmir, the way forward. And it had to be done because there was a lot of negative propaganda after the Article 370 was abolished. There was negative propaganda in the Western press that Indian government is doing genocide of Kashmiri Muslims, etc., which is all hogwash. So we did a symposium, and Professor Nanda was invited very specifically to speak on the issue of genocide, how genocide is defined, and what happened in Kashmir. It's the other way around, that Kashmiri Pandits were kicked out and they suffered actually ethnic cleansing from Kashmir. Professor Nanda came. I picked him up from the airport. He stayed with me in my home. Remember, he was 85 years old at that point in time. So his room was upstairs, and I wanted to carry his suitcase because I didn't want an 85 years old person to carry his suitcase up the stairs. And Professor Nanda would not let me do that. He said, no, I am going to, carry my own suitcase to the bedroom. And I was afraid that he might fall. On the way back, when the symposium was over and then again we had to take him to the airport, it was the same story. He refused to allow me to carry his suitcase. And that tells you what kind of gentleman he was. He really did not want any privileges. There's another anecdote along with the same symposium. For this symposium, we had raised some funds and we had decided that we will reimburse everyone who came from out of the town, at least for the airfare, so that they are not inconvenienced. So after the symposium was over, I mailed him a check for his airfare. And you know what happened? Check was returned to me uncashed. Nanda Ji said, I came for the symposium because I believe in the cause, not because I want to be compensated. So these are small little things people don't know about this man who was so humble, so gentlemanly. He wanted to speak about Mother India and not be, compensated in any way. I have worked with him very closely for last 3 years on the International Commission for Human Rights and Religious Freedom. As Rasitaji said, that not only he was a member of the board of directors, he was also chairperson of the International Advisory Board of the ICHRRF. And he was a beacon of life, a beacon of hope in the human rights community, because he would never stop talking about human rights of the oppressed minorities wherever they may be. I know at one point in time, Shekharji wanted Nandaji to speak on human rights situation in Ukraine. And in fact, I arranged a special session of ICHRRF, a lecture on human rights violations in Ukraine. And he did speak on that. We were so, impressed and we were so taken by his scholarship that under his guidance and under his mentorship, we decided to start a fellowship training program in human rights as part of ICHRRF. Professor Ved Nanda was the chief mentor for that fellowship training program. He would come every Friday evening to participate in the fellowship training program. He will give his mentors comments, and the fellowship trainees liked it very much. Actually, we had named this fellowship training program Professor Ved Nanda Fellowship Training Program in Human Rights. And now we have renamed it as Professor Ved P. Nanda Memorial Fellowship Training Program in Human Rights. So although he may not be there with us physically, he will always be with us in terms of training next generation of leaders in human rights, because the fellowship training program in his name still exists. He was always available anytime I wanted him for a lecture. We used to conduct special hearings on human rights in various countries. And because of his, very advanced scholarship in human rights and international law, we always relied on him to chair and plan those special hearings. So he chaired special hearings on ethnic cleansing and genocide of Kashmiri Pandits. He chaired special hearings on ethnic cleansing of Bangladeshi minorities. He chaired a special hearing on a symposium on human rights violations, when the Winter Olympics were organized by communist China. He was always willing. You only had to give him like a phone call and he'll be willing to come and talk to you or to the audience. He also had a deep attachment to the concept of not just human rights, but also of human dignity. He always opined that you cannot take human rights devoid of human dignity. Both are very important. We have to balance the concept of human rights with the concept of human dignity. If my human right leads to loss or violation of human dignity of another human being, then that right is not good. So we have always to do a balance between rights and dignities. He was always concerned about well-being of people who worked with him, whether they were colleagues, associates, students, and fellowship trainees. Every time on telephone, he would guide me that Adityanji, don't work so hard. You are taking too much on you. Your health will suffer. Delegate some responsibility to junior people. But it was always a worthwhile interaction with him, whether live or on telephone. He always, made jokes because of the commission's nature was international. So he would always joke around that you should not be running an international commission, you should be running the country. I miss his guidance. I miss his guidance in the work we are doing in the field of human rights. There's a huge void. No one can replace the void Padma Bhushan, Professor Ved Nanda Ji, gave us. Nobody can get into his shoes, although we will try. We will try to carry his legacy forward with untiring efforts. That would be our eulogy to Professor V.P. Nanda. We will continue to hold him as a beacon of hope, beacon of guidance for human rights, human dignity, and civilizational harmony. Thank you very much indeed. It's my pleasure to be part of this Shraddhanjali session for a decent human being. The world needs such people. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adityanji, for sharing such precious memories of Professor Nanda Ji. As we come together in somber reflection, let us draw inspiration from the timeless wisdom of Hindu philosophy, which teaches us that life and death are integral parts of the cosmic cycle. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna imparts a lesson that the soul is eternal, beyond birth and death. It is a journey through various bodies, and death is but a transition, much like changing worn out garments. In this spirit, today's gathering is not solely a mourning of loss, but a celebration of Nandaji's journey, a journey that touched the lives of those around him, leaving indelible imprints of love, wisdom, and compassion. According to Hindu philosophy, the departed soul embarks on a new adventure guided by the accumulated karma of this lifetime. I would like to next call upon Adappa Prasad ji to please share remembrances of Professor Nanda ji.
Namaste, Radheshyam ji, namaskar, Professor Anderson, Dr. Adityan ji, Dr. Ajay Shah, Dr. Thomas Abraham, Risita ji, and Shivkumar ji. I came in contact with Swargi Nanda ji about 25 years ago in Washington, D.C., actually in Radheshyam ji's house. I was awestruck with his extremely pleasant personality. That is like my first impression. Soumya, loving, kind, and fatherly disposition. He was one of the few whose feet I used to touch when I meet. Actually, he was a few months younger than my father, who also went away in 2022. So I used to meet him regularly, particularly in DC and New Jersey areas. Sometimes with Bhishma ji, Radheshyam ji, Saumitra ji, Mahesh Mehta ji, Manohar Shinde ji, all great people that I'm fortunate to have be in contact in the United States. He always had kind words, encouraging and inspirational discussions about our responsibility as a karyakarta, as a volunteer, our work related to advocacy and more. He has foresight, and he actually cautioned us about the registration of foreign political parties well 3 years in advance, into President Trump's administration. Just in last December, when he went to Houston, he was healthy and met with our volunteers, and they were all surprised that he's gone. We surely will miss his presence and guidance, but we will continue trying to fulfill his vision and carry on his ideals. I feel I consider fortunate to be in touch with such a Mahan Atma, such an intellectual scholar that Adityanji presented, such an accomplished and inspirational man. Bhagwan bless his Mahan Punyatma. Om Shanti. Rashida ji, you are on mute.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you so much, Adapaji. I'd like to next invite Professor Radhesham Dwivedi ji. He's on the advisory board of the Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh and the International Center for Cultural Studies. Professor Nanda ji was a very close personal friend, family friend, guide, and mentor to Radhesham Dwivedi ji for over 3 decades. Over to Dwivedi ji.
I feel so. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Go.
yes. Good.
Oh, very good. I don't know. I'm getting old, and Nandaji was even 1 year older to me, but he looked so young. So every time he came to Washington, he came many, many times. Sometimes he'll come more than once in a month in some hearings and in some baitaks of the HSS and so on, so forth. And the joke will be, Nanda ji, how come you look so young? आप मुझसे बड़े हैं. And then he'll say, मैंने शुद्ध देशी घी खाया है. So, शुद्ध देशी ghee, those of you who are from India, they know what I'm talking about. So anyway, Nanda ji, as Rasita ji was telling you, was a very, very close personal friend, and more than that, a family friend. He will stay in some very expensive hotels close to the White House and so on, would be invited all the way from the President Clinton, all the way, this Secretary of State, I'm forgetting her name. She was he's a student, and many times I would run into some people and who's in the Washington D.C. and they'll say, he, and I would say, yeah, he's very good. He said, you're very lucky. I said, yes, I am very lucky. He taught me law. I said, what do you do? I'm a judge. So he was that kind of person. But Nandaji himself was a very unassuming kind of person. If you talk about him, anything about his greatness, he'll very quickly dismiss it. One of the great hallmarks of a great person is that when you sit next to him, you feel kind of elevated. And that was the thing with Nandaji. You never felt that he is such a great man. He'll become just one of you, not only the older person, even the children. See, once I was taking him to the airport, and we were almost halfway to the airport, Dallas Airport. I live in Greenbelt, which is about 40 miles. And halfway, Nandai said, let's go back. I said, what happened? He said, nothing. I mean, kuch to hua hoga bhai. What? No, I forgot to say thanks to Rachel. Rachel is my granddaughter. So I said, Nanda, you okay? I'll tell her. He said, no. I said, you will be late. He said, no, there's plenty of time. So Nanda ji insisted and I brought him back. He came and he knocked at the door. Rachel was in school those days. Hey, hello, Rachel. I'm sorry I was not able to say thanks. I said, Nanda, it's okay. So just like the American children say, Nandaji, it's okay. I said, Nandaji, let's go back. So that, but this is one of the, I mean, every family member felt so close to him, and he made everyone feel so close to him that I feel like I have lost more than a family member, really. The other thing that nobody talked about was that there was one gentleman named Oberoi. Oberoi was a mechanical engineer. He made a lot of money. And then he left that money for religious studies, Indian religious studies. And so they were looking for someone who could just manage that. And they finally found Nandaji. So Nandaji was organizing every year a annual meeting with some particular topic, and in that he'll invite David Frawley, Jeffrey Armstrong, Jeffrey Long, and all those people. Even the Swamis from the Himalaya Academy who published the Hinduism Today from Hawaii. And I met all those people, besides a whole bunch of academicians in the who are in the US. But I think one of his legacy will be this Oberoi Foundation. Yashwant Pathak ji is now looking after that. But talking about Nandaji, really, you have talked about his professional life so much. I have more personal memories. I become very emotional really, talking about him. So I would really stop right here, and I thank you very much for organizing and offer my heartfelt Shraddhanjali to this great man, and who will continue to inspire thousands and thousands of Swayamsevaks all over. Not only here, but because I don't know how many of you know what a Swayamsevak and Pracharak of RSS is like. Many times I've traveled with him in India. I have invited him in the International Center Cultural Studies meetings, and he was always there. And we stayed many times in the same room. Once I was in the Karyalaya in Delhi, RSS Karyalaya, and he told me there was a chabutra. You know what chabutra is? A people tree and a something, where you can put things. And he told me, you see, this is where I used to sleep. And this is when he was the president of the Delhi University Students Association. He was a gold medalist of the law college, and so many things. I mean, personally, he was one of the very, very tall persons, and never let you feel that he was one of those tall giants amongst us. So, Shraddhanjali to him, and thank you very much for organizing this and inviting me to share my view. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, Radheshwam Divejiji. As you said, the the sign of a great man is how much impact they leave on the lives of others. In that regard, Professor Nandaji has left a void, and his loss is an irreparable loss for all of us. I'd like to next invite Thomas Abraham G. Thomas Abraham G is the chairman of the Global Organization of People of Indian Origin. He's a good friend of Professor Nanda Ji, and was also a colleague at the University of Denver. They've been involved together in many American political campaigns and several campaigns from 1981 for almost about 3 decades. Over to Thomas Abraham Ji.
Namaskar, Namaskaram, Vanakkam, good evening, good morning. distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to be here to pay tributes to a good friend, Professor Ved Nanda. He was a patriotic Indian. I have had opportunity to work with him closely since 1981, when I took a job at University of Denver, where Professor Nanda was already working at the law school. Since then, we worked together on many community campaigns. We jointly did a couple of Indian American fundraising campaigns for candidates running for elections in Colorado in the 1980s. Other than his professional contribution as a professor of law and a leading legal expert, Professor Nanda stood out for his contribution to the Indian diaspora community for the last 5 decades. Other than what others spoke earlier, Professor Nanda had made major contribution to the mainstream Indian community organizations too. At our first Global Convention of People of Indian Origin in 1999 in New York City, where GOPIO was formed, Professor Nanda was interested to come out with a structure for a global Indian diaspora organization. He helped to draft the constitution and bylaws of the Global Organization of People of Indian Origin. He had attended many of our early steering committee meetings in many parts of the world. In fact, we had opportunity to travel together to Germany, to Netherlands, and many other countries to attend the conventions, and also in the USA and in India. He was also a frequent speaker at the convention organized by the National Federation of Indian American Associations, held in different cities. After our first GOPIO convention in 1989, he had chaired GOPIO Human Rights Council and successfully campaigned on the human rights violation of Indo-Fijians and Indo-Sri Lankans, and we successfully filed a case at the UN Human Rights Commission in 1991 in support of our community in those countries, the UN Commission in Geneva. He made substantial contribution to build Indian American communities' infrastructure through national organizations for the last 5 decades. His passing away is a great loss for our community. GOPIO International and its chapters convey our heartfelt condolences to Nanda family and particularly Anjali and her family. We will miss him in our midst. May his soul rest in peace. Like a bird singing in the rain, let grateful thoughts prevail at this time. In fact, we are now celebrating his life for his contribution to Indian diaspora, India, and society at large. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to pay tributes to Nanda Ji. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas Ji. I'd like to next invite Dr. Ajay Shah. He's the Executive Vice President of the World Hindu Council of America and also the co-founder of the Hindu Students Council, the first and largest organization of Hindu students outside Bharat. Over to Dr. Ajay Shah.
Ajay ji, your mic is on mute.
Yeah, namaste. Thank you. I've said this probably in other contexts, and if someone has heard it, I apologize for that. But my first and foremost memory is every few weeks, probably every month or so, my phone would ring, and the voice at the other end would say, Jaiji, I'm simply calling to ask you how you are doing. And then he would say, I don't know how you're doing all the things that you're doing. And I would tell him, Nandaji, you are an inspiration to all of us. You're teaching all over the world. You're traveling all the time. He's many, many years older than me. And I said, you do all these other activities. I hope I can do at least half of what you do. And that's how the conversation would start. I think I had a special bond with Nandaji. That was that he was one of the founding members of Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, and I had really a fortune to meet. I'm a Vidyarthi Parishad Karyakarta from Mumbai, and so it was my privilege to actually get to know one of the founding members and the founding pillars of Vidyarthi Parishad, and this is really the 75th anniversary of what is now the largest student organization in the world. So this was one of the early achievements of Nandaji. He would tell me some stories. I wish I had recording of some of these stories, because he would tell me about his interaction with Guru Golwalkar and how he asked Nandaji to be part of their Parishad when he was at Delhi University. Nandaji, of course, as many people on this panel know, he was also a former member of Friends of India Society International, FISI, FISI, and he was, that the organization played a key role in fighting the emergency and the revival of democracy in India after the emergency. He was also patron member of the organization that I have the privilege of now leading, which is Vishnu Parishad of America, as its president. And despite all his busy schedule, he found time to be part of the Hindu Pact, which is our advocacy arm, which is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. And I asked, I just called Nanda and said, would you mind being chairman of the advisory board? I know how busy you are and how many other organizations and some responsibilities you have. And he said, I'll be glad to. That's all it needed. And that was just, that was his personality, right? He would just, whatever you ask, you ask him, and he'd never say no. He was, we had two, post-COVID, we had two Hindu Mandir Executives Conferences, now it's called Hindu Mandir Empowerment Council, in-person meetings. And we invited him to keynote. First one, he had just had surgery, he could do it only remotely. He never said no. And he said, can I please request your permission if I, to join by online, because I've just had surgery. And I said, Nadaji, you don't even know to say that, please. And the next year he came in person. So we were very privileged to have him both the times as a keynote speaker. We asked him, to accept the American Hindu Lifetime Contribution Award this September, and he graciously accepted. But really, it was not us honoring him. He was actually honoring us by accepting this award and setting the award, to a different level, so as the inaugural award. Of course, he was, as many people here know, he was one of the founding members of the Hindu Mandir in Denver. He was, to the last day, I think he was the chairman of the board of trustees of that mandir. So he was always engaged, not only at the national level, but also at the local mandir, as a proud Hindu. And he was always, personally, I can always go to him, seek advice, and he would give me advice, even on the most tiring and challenging times. That whenever I asked him for advice, he was always there. I had the privilege of meeting him 3 times last year. We had a planning meeting for Sangha this year, a periodic planning meeting, and somehow we were invited to that meeting to participate. We also met when he came to this Hindu Mandir Executives Council meeting, and I also had the privilege of kind of meeting him when I went for the Hindu University Board of Trustees meeting I believe it was in November. So three time I had a privilege of spending time with him, and every single time I left with nothing but great advice. If I could take one thing away from his my interactions with him, It was not all the achievements that he had as a scholar, legal scholar, all the Hindu activities that he did, all the great contributions he made to Bharat. All of that to me was, really secondary. What I really learned from him is how we interact. The word that we use a lot of times is atmiyata. It's connecting at a very different level, connecting at the level of heart, connecting at the level of soul. And one of the things that I will always remember is the atmiyata he showed to me and to all the karyakartas in our organizations, and the interactions, that were genuine, heartfelt interactions that we had with all of us. And it didn't really matter how senior you were, how junior you were. He came to many of our ABP alumni meetings as just a participant, and every time he wanted to hear from us more than he wanted to tell. And that really, if I can learn one thing in my life from Nandaji, that would be the one that would be what I would learn. I would conclude by saying, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May Paramatma give his Atma, Sadgati. Namaste. Thank you for the opportunity to be speaking here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ajay Shah. Wisdom, integrity, and vision are the pillars upon which great men build their legacy. In that regard, Nandaji inspired others not only with his words, but by example that he set through his actions. Shekhar Tiwari ji has some difficulty joining us at the studio, so he will be joining us via a video call. Shekhar ji is the chairman of the American Hindu Coalition. Over to Shekhar Tiwari ji, who will now share his remembrances.
शेखर जी बोलिएगा.
I do not know why we get emotional about people whose only body dies, not the soul, not the spirit, not this Hollywood. One of the things that Nandaji explained to me, and that also very late, I struggle with this Ukraine war. When you kill that many people in a night with unprovoked, how is that war? Fight. Nandaji told me that the concept of the human rights was created to protect the people from the. So it's not human dignity, Aditya, because he understood the government is very powerful, the police, the army, the power to destroy. How do people protect themselves from such a big power? And that is where the concept of the human right came, which has couple of pillars. The most important cannot implement. Second one, right to express freely. I will talking what my feeling is. Mahatma Gandhi used that everywhere. Right to gather. So human right is not a fictional right. First thing, human right is a right given by the God Almighty Himself. You cannot take away. No government can take away. So it is to protect people from their own content. Is what is the human right? As long as you remember this, human right is not a fiction. Government, all the government, will destroy people every day. So not we can keep it alive by basically remembering the human right is a right meant.
Yeah, Rasita ji, over to you.
Thank you so much, Shekhar ji. Shyam Parande ji and Dr. Bharat Barai are unfortunately not able to join us today. So we will be concluding our Shraddhanjali session now. As we navigate the waves of grief, Let us find solace in the belief that Nanda Ji has not truly left us. His essence, his love, and the memories we shared endure, resonating in the very fabric of our lives. Today, let us celebrate his life, cherishing the moments we had the privilege to share and embracing the eternal nature of the soul's journey in the vast cosmos. May Nandaji's soul find peace and liberation, and may we, the living, find strength and wisdom to carry forward his legacy with love and grace. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti. Thank you
Rasita
all.
ji just would like to close with a sloka, if you don't mind. So, Om
Yes.
Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivartanam Urvarukamiv Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshi Jamamritate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all, for all those who are on the panel as well as those who are online. We pray for his Atma to attain moksha. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.